and I saw him staring right at me, and he had hostility in his eyes. So I walked over and I said, "Hi, my name is Chuck Norris." I stuck my hand out.
John Wayne stood with his arms crossed, watching a 33-year-old man move for exactly 10 seconds. Then the last real cowboy in Hollywood turned to his crew and said 5 words nobody on that Warner Brothers backlot expected to hear. What happened next didn't just change one Western film. It changed the way Hollywood filmed action forever. July 1973. Warner Brothers Studio, Burbank, California. The heat sat heavy over the dusty Western set built to resemble an 1880s frontier town. This was John Wayne's territory, one of the last places where old Hollywood still operated by its own rules.
And when he walked in, it was like an air of animosity just kind of flowed into the studio.
Wayne was 66 years old, towering at 6'4", already a legend with more than 170 films behind him and an Oscar for true grit. To audiences, he wasn't just an actor. He was the American cowboy. But the industry around him was changing fast. Bruce Lee had died only weeks earlier, and martial arts films were exploding in popularity. Younger audiences wanted speed, precision, and intensity, not the slow saloon brawls that had defined Westerns for decades. Studio executives feared Wayne's style was starting to look old-fashioned. That's why they quietly brought in Chuck Norris. At 33 years old, Chuck was a 6-time world karate champion who had recently appeared alongside Bruce Lee in Return of the Dragon. He wasn't famous yet. Most people only knew him as a respected martial artist who ran karate schools across California. Warner Brothers hired him to modernize the fight choreography without completely abandoning the Western feel Wayne demanded.
And as we're talking, I feel the air of animosity slowly evaporating. And I was waiting for him to say what the reason was. Finally, he said, "You know."
The problem was nobody had warned John Wayne. At 9:15 that morning, Chuck's pickup truck rolled onto the lot. Dressed in jeans, boots, and a plain T-shirt, he blended in with the crew. The assistant director met him near the entrance and quietly warned him. "Mr. Wayne doesn't know you're here yet. Best stay low-key." Chuck simply nodded. When they reached the main set, Wayne was already working through a saloon fight scene with the director. 3 men corner the hero. The hero fights his way out. Classic Western stuff. Wayne demonstrated the choreography himself. Big punches, heavy throws, simple movements designed to look safe and clear on camera. Chuck watched silently from behind the equipment. The scene worked, but compared to the martial arts films audiences were now watching, it looked slow and outdated. Finally, the director called for a break. Producer Richard Brenner walked toward Wayne with Chuck following behind. "Duke, got a minute?" Wayne turned, already looking irritated. "What is it, Richard?" "I want you to meet someone. This is Chuck Norris, 6-time world karate champion. We brought him in to help redesign the fight scenes."
I think opening doors and tipping your hat to ladies is probably a thing of the past, Dick.
The silence that followed felt immediate and heavy. John Wayne stared at Chuck without expression, but everyone on the set recognized the look. The Duke was irritated, maybe more than irritated. Wayne slowly turned back toward producer Richard Brenner. "We've got Mike Cullen," he said flatly. "Mike's handled my fight scenes for 15 years. Why exactly do we need a karate champion on a Western?" Brenner shifted nervously under Wayne's glare. "The studio thinks the action could feel more modern, faster, more dynamic without losing the Western atmosphere." "Modern," Wayne repeated. "You mean karate?" "Not necessarily karate," Brenner answered carefully, "just more technical choreography." Wayne shook his head. "We don't need fancy kicks in a cowboy picture. Cowboys fought in bars. Audiences already know what that looks like." Chuck had stayed quiet until then, but finally he stepped forward slightly. "Mr. Wayne, I'm not here to turn your Western into a kung fu movie," he said calmly. "I'm here to make the fights look real." Wayne looked at him properly for the first time. "They look real now. They look like old Western fights. Chuck replied respectfully. But audiences have changed. They've seen faster fighting, more believable fighting. I can keep the Western style while making your character look dangerous instead of theatrical.
I don't squawk and cry baby and say, geez, I had to go without meals when I was 16 and 17.
The entire set went still. Even the stunt crew stopped moving. Mike Cullen stood awkwardly nearby, caught between loyalty to Wayne and the studio's obvious interest in something new. Wayne's jaw tightened. You think I don't know how to stage a fight? Chuck never raised his voice. I think you know exactly how to stage one for 1953, he said. I'm talking about 1973. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. You didn't challenge John Wayne on his own set, especially not in front of his crew, but Wayne didn't explode. Instead, he studied Chuck more carefully now, almost like he was trying to figure out whether the younger man was brave, stupid, or both. You've got a lot of confidence for somebody I've never heard of. Chuck shook his head slightly. It's not confidence, sir. It's skill. There's a difference. Something changed in Wayne's expression. Not anger, interest. All right, then, Wayne finally said. Show me. The producer stepped forward nervously. Duke, maybe we should... No. Wayne cut him off without looking away from Chuck. He wants to tell me my fights are outdated. Let's see what he does better.
And when I decided to become an actor, I said, well, what do I want to do as an actor? Because there's a broad spectrum to acting. You have your...
Chuck nodded once. He had expected this from the beginning. A man like John Wayne would never accept credentials or championships. He needed proof. Real proof. And Chuck also understood the trap. If he showed off with spinning kicks and flashy martial arts, Wayne would dismiss him instantly. But if he failed to impress, he'd probably be gone before lunch. What do you want to see? Chuck asked. Wayne pointed toward the saloon set behind them. The scene we just rehearsed, 3 men in a bar fight. Show me how Chuck Norris handles it without turning my Western into a karate movie. Chuck looked around the set, then pointed at 3 stuntmen nearby. You, and you. Come here. The men walked over cautiously. Chuck positioned them quickly around the saloon floor. You're not throwing fake movie punches, he told them. Come at me like you actually want to hurt me. Make it real. Then he turned back toward Wayne. The old style uses big swings because cameras needed wider movement, Chuck explained. It works visually, but it also makes the hero look slow. A real fighter wastes nothing. Every movement has purpose. Wayne folded his arms and said nothing. He simply watched. Chuck stepped beside the bar counter while the 3 stuntmen spread around him in a loose circle. The geometry of the scene instantly looked different. Tighter, more dangerous. By now, the entire production had stopped. Crew members leaned over lights and cameras to watch. Even the director had quietly moved closer. The set had become completely silent. Wayne gave a small nod. Whenever you're ready.
And I decided what I wanted to do was try to project a hero image on the screen. I thought we were in dire need of heroes on the screen.
The first stuntman rushed forward and threw a hard punch toward Chuck's head. What happened next made everyone on that Warner Brothers set forget how to breathe. Chuck didn't move like a movie fighter. He moved like a real one. There were no exaggerated wind-ups, no dramatic pauses, no flashy martial arts poses, just speed, pure efficiency. Chuck slipped the punch with barely an inch to spare, trapped the man's arm, and redirected his momentum so smoothly the stuntman crashed sideways through a wooden table before most people realized what had happened. The table exploded apart. 1 second, maybe 2. Before the first man even hit the floor, the second stuntman charged in from Chuck's left. Chuck pivoted sharply, drove a quick strike into the man's ribs, then swept his legs out from under him with brutal precision. The third attacker hesitated for half a second. That hesitation ended the fight. Chuck closed the distance instantly, grabbed the man by the shirt collar, spun him into the bar, and stopped with his forearm across the stuntman's throat before throwing the finishing blow.
And I grew up with heroes. You know, I had Gary Cooper and John Wayne and people like that to look up to and relate to.
10 seconds. That was all it took. 3 men down. No wasted movement, no flashy karate routine. Just controlled violence that looked frighteningly real. The set stayed silent. Nobody clapped, nobody spoke. Even the stuntmen lying on the floor looked stunned. And in the middle of that silence, John Wayne slowly uncrossed his arms. The second stuntman charged in fast. Chuck reacted instantly. He blocked the attack, redirected the man's momentum, then drove a controlled punch into the stuntman's solar plexus. It looked absolutely brutal from the outside, but the strike stopped with perfect control. Before anyone could process it, Chuck followed with a throw that sent the man crashing backward into a wooden chair. 3 seconds total. The third stuntman moved from behind, trying to lock Chuck up around the shoulders. Chuck dropped his weight, broke the grip with a movement so sharp and efficient most people watching barely understood what they had seen, then turned with a strike that stopped less than an inch from the man's throat. The entire exchange lasted maybe 7 or 8 seconds. But it wasn't the speed that stunned the set. It was the realism. Nothing about Chuck's movements looked staged. There were no dramatic wind-ups, no flashy spinning kicks, no exaggerated movie poses. Every movement looked fast, practical, and painfully believable. It looked like what would actually happen if a dangerous man fought 3 average men inside a saloon. And somehow, despite Chuck's martial arts background, it still felt completely Western. Not karate, not kung fu, just violence stripped down to efficiency. Chuck straightened his shirt, breathing calmly, barely winded. Then he looked directly at Wayne. "That's what I mean," Chuck said. "Same scene, same setting. But now your character looks like the most dangerous man in the room, not just the biggest." The set stayed silent. Even the stuntmen who had just been thrown around were grinning while they pulled themselves off the floor. They had felt how precise Chuck's control was. Every hit looked devastating without actually hurting anybody. Wayne still hadn't moved. His arms remained crossed as he stared at Chuck in complete silence for several long seconds. Then, finally, he turned toward the crew and said 5 words nobody expected to hear. "Hire him right now. Today." The tension on the set vanished instantly. Crew members laughed in relief. The producer practically exhaled his soul. Even the director smiled. Wayne looked back at Chuck. "That wasn't karate," he said. "That was something else." Chuck nodded. "That was practical fighting, sir. Everything I showed can be taught to actors. It'll look real on camera, and it still fits a Western because real fighting doesn't change just because the century does." Wayne slowly nodded to himself. "How long you been doing this?" "Training since I was 18, sir. Competing for 15 years. Teaching for 10. Wayne shook his head. "No, I mean movies." Chuck gave a small smile. "This is only my 2nd film job. I'm not a movie star. I'm a fighter who understands how to make fights feel real." Wayne glanced over toward longtime stunt coordinator Mike Cullen. "Mike," Wayne called out, "you've been with me a long time. You're still running the stunt team, but I want Chuck working every fight scene with you from now on." Mike didn't look insulted in the slightest. In fact, he looked excited. "Did you see that, Duke?" Mike laughed. "He just showed us what we've been doing wrong for 20 years. Wayne allowed himself a small grin. "Yeah," he admitted quietly. "I saw it." Then he turned back toward Chuck again. "You know what else I saw?" Wayne said. "I just saw what the next 20 years of action movies are going to look like." The producer stepped forward again, still looking stunned by how quickly the situation had changed. Wayne pointed directly at him. "Richard, tear up whatever contract you offered him." Brenner blinked. "Double it." The set immediately exploded into motion. The director was already discussing ways to rework earlier fight scenes. Crew members gathered around Chuck asking questions. Mike Cullen began introducing him to the stunt team like a newly discovered secret weapon. But in the middle of the chaos, Wayne quietly pulled Chuck aside. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, sir." Wayne studied him carefully. "Why didn't you do any of the flashy stuff? I've seen martial arts movies. Why no spinning kicks? Why not show off?" Chuck thought about it for a second before answering. "Because you didn't need to see what I could do," he said. "You needed to see what would work for your film. Spinning kicks are impressive, but they don't belong in a saloon fight." Wayne stayed quiet for a moment. Then he gave a slow nod. "You're smart," he said softly. "I'm 66 years old," John Wayne said quietly, "and I just watched a man half my age show me I've been doing it wrong." The set around them was still buzzing with excitement, but Wayne spoke calmly, almost thoughtfully. "That should probably make me angry," he continued, "but it doesn't." Chuck stayed silent. "You know why?" Wayne asked. "Because you're right. Times change. And if I keep making movies the same way I did in 1953, then I'm not respecting the audience anymore." For a moment, Wayne looked less like the untouchable Duke and more like a veteran, finally recognizing the future standing in front of him. Then he extended his hand. "Welcome to the picture, Chuck." Chuck shook it firmly. Wayne's grip was still powerful, still commanding, despite his age. But before letting go, Wayne added one more thing. "In about 10 years, guys like you are going to take over action movies completely. Martial arts, technical fighting, precision. My era's ending. I can feel it." He paused briefly. "But if it's ending with somebody like you showing us where things are headed, then maybe that's not such a bad thing. At least I know the future's in good hands." Chuck honestly didn't know how to respond to that. Wayne finally smiled and stepped back. "Now get to work," he said. "You've got an entire movie to fix." The next 6 weeks on that Warner Brothers set became unforgettable for everyone involved. Chuck Norris didn't just redesign fight scenes. He retrained the entire way actors moved during combat. He taught performers how to conserve movement, how to strike realistically, how to make violence look dangerous without losing control. Most surprisingly, he worked closely with Wayne himself, not teaching him karate, not turning him into a martial artist, just helping him move like an experienced fighter instead of an actor throwing movie punches. And the difference on camera was immediate. Wayne suddenly looked faster, sharper, more intimidating. His characters no longer relied only on size and presence. They looked capable. The film wrapped in September 1973. On the final day of shooting, Wayne pulled Chuck aside one last time. "You changed the way I think about action movies," Wayne told him. "I'm 66 years old. I've probably got 1 or 2 films left in me. But because of what you taught me, those films are going to be better than they would have been otherwise." For Chuck, who was only 33 at the time, the moment stayed with him forever, because he realized something important that day. Respecting the past didn't mean refusing to evolve. The future only worked when people were willing to learn from each other. John Wayne died in June 1979, 6 years after that meeting on the Warner Brothers backlot. Before his death, Wayne gave an interview discussing the changing world of action films and the growing popularity of martial arts cinema. During the conversation, he brought up Chuck Norris. "I met Chuck Norris in 1973 on a Western set," Wayne said. "At first I was skeptical. I thought martial arts would ruin Westerns and make fights feel unrealistic." Then Wayne smiled. "But Chuck showed me a 10-second demonstration of what real fighting could look like. And suddenly I realized most of what we'd been doing for years was outdated." He paused before delivering the line that perfectly summed up their unlikely meeting. "Chuck didn't make Westerns worse," Wayne said. "He made them honest. They were the future of it." The interviewer asked John Wayne whether it bothered him that the next generation of action stars were martial artists instead of traditional Western actors. Wayne laughed. "Hell no," he said. "I'm relieved." The interviewer looked surprised, but Wayne continued. "Guys like Chuck Norris care about getting it right. They care about making fights feel believable, real danger, real movement. That's all I ever tried to do myself." Then Wayne said something that stunned the reporter. "The fact they can do it better than I ever could doesn't diminish what I did. It honors it, because they're continuing the tradition. They're still trying to make audiences believe what they're seeing." The interviewer pressed him further. "But aren't you concerned your style of filmmaking will eventually disappear?" Wayne grew quieter at that question. "My style already has disappeared," he admitted. "That's not an insult. That's evolution." He leaned back in his chair for a moment before continuing. "I represented what made sense for my time. But the kids watching movies now want something different. They want speed, precision, technical excellence." Then Wayne smiled. "And they should have it. Because Chuck Norris and men like him earned the right to redefine what action movies look like for their generation." "Any regrets?" the interviewer asked. Wayne paused. "Just one," he finally said. "I wish I'd met Chuck 20 years earlier. Imagine what we could have made together." Years later, Mike Cullen, the longtime stunt coordinator who had worked beside Wayne for over a decade, was interviewed for a documentary about old Hollywood stunt work. By then, Wayne was gone. Chuck Norris had become a global action star, and the entire industry had transformed into exactly what Wayne predicted. During the interview, Mike was asked about that day on the Warner Brothers set in 1973. "I worked with John Wayne for 15 years, Mike said, "and I never saw him respect somebody that quickly." He smiled at the memory. Chuck did that 10-second demonstration, and Wayne immediately understood he was watching the future. The interviewer asked what impressed him most. "The restraint," Mike answered instantly. "That's what separated Chuck from everybody else." Mike explained that Chuck could have shown off if he wanted to. He could have thrown flashy kicks, done dramatic martial arts moves, tried to overwhelm everyone with spectacle. "But he didn't," Mike said. "He showed us exactly what the movie needed: practical fighting, realistic movement. He understood story first and ego second." Then Mike nodded thoughtfully. "That's why Wayne hired him immediately. Wayne respected professionalism more than anything, and Chuck had it." The Western they worked on together was not a massive blockbuster. It performed well enough, but it didn't break records or become a legendary classic. But inside Hollywood, people noticed something different. Action directors noticed. Stunt coordinators noticed. Actors noticed. The fights suddenly looked tighter, faster, more believable. The old, exaggerated movie brawls were slowly disappearing, replaced by grounded combat that felt dangerous and authentic. 5 years later, Chuck Norris starred in Good Guys Wear Black. 10 years later, he was one of the biggest action stars in the world. And yet, according to people who knew him, Chuck never forgot that day in July 1973 when John Wayne stood on a dusty Warner Brothers backlot, watched him fight for 10 seconds, and recognized the future standing in front of him. Because that's what real legends do. They don't cling desperately to the past. They recognize excellence, even when it signals the end of their own era. John Wayne could have rejected Chuck Norris immediately. He could have refused to adapt. He could have insisted Westerns stay frozen in the style that made him famous. Instead, he listened. He watched. And then he said 5 simple words that quietly helped reshape action cinema forever. "Hire him right now, today." With those words, the last great cowboy in Hollywood welcomed the next generation. And maybe that's why John Wayne remained larger than life long after the cameras stopped rolling. not because he refused change, but because when the future finally arrived, he had the wisdom to recognize it. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, leave a comment with your favorite John Wayne or Chuck Norris movie, and subscribe for more incredible Hollywood stories that most people have never heard. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.